Hey everyone, Blake here. I am the host of the Fasting Lifestyle Podcast, so I hope you enjoy this episode. Now, I am also a health coach, so I wanted to announce that my community Fasting Academy is live and up and running. It's a weekly group coaching class to overhaul your lifestyle and feel the best you've ever felt with the power of fasting, whole foods, and group accountability. And for right now, I am offering your first month free, so just click the link in the description box below to get started. And stay tuned for the show. What's up, everyone? Blake here. Welcome back to another episode of the Fasting Lifestyle Podcast. I have another amazing guest for you guys today. We have Chris Eaton. Chris is a veteran. He is a death doula and the owner of Trinity Yoga and Wellness here in Florida. This man has an incredible story, and we are going to get into all of that today. But first, Chris, thank you so much for being here, brother. Welcome. And I wanted to start with your origin story.
Thank you for having me here, and hello to everyone online, whoever gets to watch this. Man. Yeah, so Blake and I met at a vegan fest in Tampa Bay not too long ago. So I was so grateful to hear part of his story, and we just kind of went a lot further in depth because I find journeys fascinating. But yeah, my story, and I'll try to we could touch base on different things, but I definitely need to talk about my health journey. Um, I grew up in a household just outside Chicago. Everything was taken care of for me. I never really had to question uh, safety, food, shelter, warmth, all that. So I'm very grateful for all that. My parents absolutely love me, but the emotional side of life, I didn't really know how to navigate all that. And when I explained that, I was the guy that was getting beat up, thrown in lockers, black eyes, stuff like that. So there's a lot of questions that you have. There's a lot of thoughts, and if you don't have someone to bounce them off of, you're going to have an internal dialogue of your own assumptions. And as smart as I think I was growing up at age, 5 through 10, the database of suggestions. So I just thought the world hated me. I started getting really frustrated with that. But I put up all these walls. I took my proverbial self, I put them in a closet, and I said, "Hey, I love you. The world's not safe. I'm gonna put these masks on." So I became a mask pro, and I would navigate life like that. It really helped me out later on when I joined the military. It's very a left brain environment, and when you have to come into work and you put on your big boy hat, and there is no emotions involved. So I succeeded very well in the military. I spent 15 months over in the war zones, and then after I got out, I was a civilian. I went back, so I have around 5 years over in the war zones doing all sorts of stuff. But the things that I experienced, I just added that to the same chaos that I did.
Hey everyone, hope you're enjoying the podcast. I wanted to interrupt real quick just to let you know that I just published my new book. It's called The Fasting Guidebook. You can get your copy for free via the link below at my website, fasting.lifestyle. Just enter your name and email address and you can unsubscribe anytime. Also want to let you know that my community Fasting Academy is up and running. We are live. So if you wanted to take your fasting practice deeper and employ some of these amazing practices and changes into your lifestyle, then go ahead and check that out. For the first 100 members of the community, it's going to be at a discounted rate. So help me fill those spots and get a super good price on my community. And without further ado, let me let you get back to the podcast, and I will check in soon.
Yeah, it's like when you watch a weird movie that makes you very uncomfortable. You're like, yeah, I didn't watch that. That wasn't real. And you kind of brush it under the rug or push it out of the way. Undealt with emotions, the bottling. Um, and apparently bottling your emotions is not really good. Body Keeps a Score. If you haven't read that book, read it. Um, and I dealt with all of that angst and anger and frustrations inside of me by distracting myself. First it was working out, then it was eating, then it was alcohol, then it was pills. Uh, and by the time it was 2018, if you were to look on the outside and you looked at my Facebook, you're like, wow, this guy's successful. He's got, you know, a wife and kids, great job. Like life is just going. But inside I was dying. It was the internal dialogue, the doubt, the self-hate, all of that. And so by that point, I was drinking anywhere from 2/3 of a 750 of whiskey to a full one a day to just kill the thoughts, the noise, the feelings in the body. You just don't want to feel it. How the hell do you go to sleep at night when you have all these, really heavy thoughts and stuff? So, 2018, I said, this life sucks. I'm out. Uh, Tried taking my life. When I woke up, I was asking 3 questions. Well, two initially, and then the third one a couple of weeks after that. But how did I get here to this point? Um, how do I never go back? And then how do I help others do the same? How do I help them exit the insanities where I was? Because I went quite far down that rabbit hole to reach and attempt suicide. I spent 5 years after that going to the VA for everything that they had to offer. 24 different therapists, different types of talk therapy, EMDR to, sat with pastors and stuff. And I found after those 5 years that pretty much everyone was giving me the same solution: take this pill and come back for more talk therapy. And I had severe PTSD, and most everyone said, like, yeah, you're going to have to deal with this the rest of your life. Well, digress, I've had some family members that have also gone through with this, and I've also seen other people that have gone through with this. And I was like, well, that's a miserable life. I'm no longer having brain fog and being sluggish from all the alcohol I was drinking. Now I was having brain fog from all of the psychedelic, or not psychedelic, the psychiatric stuff for anxiety and depression. Plus, I had fractures in my spine, and I was taking sleep pills. So I had I call it my cancer thing. Not joking about cancer, but my buddy and I, he had cancer and he had this big tray. And I was like, hey, my tray's almost caught up with yours. And it was just this joke of like, who's got more pills? um, but I just foreshadowed that. And I was 35 at the time looking out at my future. And I said, wow, the next 50 years is going to suck. I'm already falling apart. So anyway, I went through that. 2022 comes around. I'm still dissatisfied, of everyone's answer of take this pill or that. And I'm like, there has to be something more. I have to be able to break through. And that's when I met Nigel, my psychotherapist. He gave me the book called The Happiness Trap. I met my shaman. I went through 2 major hero doses of psychedelics. And that was with psilocybin. After watching the Joe Rogan, Sean Ryan podcast, because I was adamantly opposed to any sort of drugs, just watching people ruin their lives throughout either becoming addicted to the substance or potentially even dying from overdose, misuse, things like that. But I did. I went and I sat, and that was a huge awakening. I call it Beyond the Veil, where you actually get to see yourself in your true rawness, and you're like, wow, person's not so bad. I love that person. And you see your true self again. I also sat down in 2023 at the same time with elders of the Tibetan monks. I had an interpreter, and I got to spend almost a week just drilling them with many, many, many questions of like, where did I go wrong? What happened? How do you navigate life? What happens when you get angry? What happens when you get starving? How do you deal with all this psychologically? I wanted to know their inner dialogue, but I also wanted to know, what do you do? What's the first thing you do when you wake up in the morning? What do you do right before you go to sleep? And so they started teaching me all the routines and stuff. And so the combination of the monks, the shamans, and the psychotherapists, I started combining neuroscience with ancient wisdom. And I found that as a society, we've pretty much just forgotten our roots and who we are and how to operate this vessel of a body. But I want to digress, and then we can go into Q&A and explore some of these things. Uh, in 2018, I had drank so much alcohol that they were talking about doing surgery, expanding my esophagus. I couldn't eat. Like when I ate, it would clump up, and then I wouldn't be able to hold it down. And then I had IBS, so people that have that experience in life, you're pretty much switching between good stools and loose stools. I'll just leave it there. But it starts to become uncontrolled. So I knew things were really bad with my health. Um, because they were talking about doing surgery, and I had to take even more pills and things like that. And so I said, I really have to change this. A lot of it was damaged due to the amounts of alcohol that I was drinking at the time. So I knew that I needed a change, and it was in ooh, 2018. Most of my friends were like, "Wow, man, that guy can pound some alcohol, whether it was beer or whiskey or whatever." But it was really unnoticeable because I was what do you call it, where you can just deal with it,
Like a functioning alcoholic.
yeah, yeah. So I was functioning. It didn't impact my work. Matter of fact, sometimes it made it easier for me to concentrate just having a drink whenever. But um, I had my friend Scott, Chris, and Cynthia. Scott comes up to me one year and he's like, I don't think you can stop drinking. And I was like, what are you talking about? And he's like, yeah, I don't think you cannot you can go without drinking. And I was like, oh, what is that? What does that mean? He's like, tell you what, hey, January is coming up. It's dry January. I'm on a keto diet, and I don't think you can last the month of January. And I was like, hold my beer. No one challenges me. I like challenge accepted. So to January of 2019, I did not drink at all. And that lasted for 6 months. And when I cut out that massive amounts of sugar, um, my entire life changed. The brain fog lifted. I started sleeping better. I started being able to focus down the rabbit holes a lot deeper. I started being able to concentrate and recall. Because one of the things that also scared me in 2018 and why I tried taking my life was I'd be at work and my boss would talk to me, and a few days later he's like, "Hey, did you get this done?" I was like, "What?" And he's like, "Blah blah blah." I'm like, "When did you tell me that?" Like, oh crap! Now I'm not retaining information. Um, so I was scared. It was a big awakening to realize like I had run myself that far. Um, but then I further started investigating how to truly feed the body after that, because after I went through my psychedelic experience in 2023, I realized that this I am a soul first before anything. And when I came to this earth, I needed this vessel, this body, this temple, or however you want to call it, uh, and it needs to be taken care of. But this is not the primary source. It's not a physical experience on this body. It's a soul experience, a soul journey on this travel. I need to take care of this vessel. And in order for me to be able to navigate more with more grace and more patience, and for the journey to be better, I need to feed it the right thing. You don't put diesel inside of a gas engine, like you know. So, um, by pulling out the gluten, the massive amounts of sugar, the pesticides, all of that, I learned that A, as a human, but B, as a death doula, that I'm able to be in much longer concentration and really being able to hear not just the words, but see your physical and hear the tones and everything, and just be in the experience with Blake in my fullness, 100% present. And when I am there for particularly in the dying, which we can talk about, but when someone's going through a really hard time, they're looking for deep connection, being heard, and then we can begin to help see where they're at and help pull them out of whatever. situation they're in, whether it's a thought process, a OODA loop that they're stuck in, or just being able to recognize um, where they're at on their journey. And whether it is that you're dying or suicidal, or you feel like you're stuck in an addiction, that's where like the power of that concentration. But to be able to concentrate, it's like you have this, if you were to think about your body as a radio antenna, and at the very top is the signal that's going to pick everything up like a cell phone, I need to be fully receptive. But putting the wrong substance into your body is like trying to answer your phone under the water.
Yeah, 100%. And I've experienced that in our few conversations at the Veg Fest, and then just now before the show. You are so present, Chris, and it's really incredible to share time with you and to share conversation with you and to learn from you and that vast amount of experience and work that you've put into yourself. And I do want to touch on a couple of these items that you brought up along your journey. Um, but I want to go back and see if we can unpack wearing masks. That's something that I felt that I was definitely doing throughout my whole life in a certain regard. And I think the audience can really relate to the fact that they feel like imposter syndrome, or that they're acting like this character in this setting and then they're acting like this character in another setting. Why was young Chris wearing masks? And what input or feedback would you have to people who are feeling that same way?
um, I love giving people this visual. So you're born, and there's this body that we have, and then it's given a name, and then we're taught these skills. We're like, we look around, we're like, oh, they're walking, I need to walk. So we figure out how to walk. But again, it's his body named Chris that's learning how to walk, and now he's walking or running. And then we go through K through 12. We learn math, science, arts, and all this stuff. And we're like, cool, I got more skills added to my resume, added to my resume. And I do more. And I'm like, added to the resume. And this is Chris, this is not Chris. All right. So now you think you're this piece of flesh with a name and all of this. And I was told, oh yeah, by the way, you're a child of God. And I was like, oh cool, I'm a child of God. Add to the resume. Chris, child of God. I logically understood it, but I didn't realize that I was a soul that was managing everything. Okay. Now, when I come out of the womb, everything that we're looking for is, if you go by Maslow's hierarchy, if you ever seen the pyramid, our basic needs in life, safety, physical, if you're into the chakra systems and all of that, your root chakra is the one of safety and comfort and soothe, feeling soothed, like we're safe, we're safe. Um, and that's the foundation that we all need to feel in order to be able to ascend, to grow, to expand, or whatever, however you want to think about it. Once that foundation is there, then you can go to the next layer, the the needs and the wants and desires and all of that. Um, so we come out of the womb and we're like, this is great, and I'm being worshipped. I'm put on a throne, and people are like, "Oh, we love you. Hey, here's food, here's water." And then I'm like, I got to learn how to communicate. So I'm like, "Wah!" And like they run over to me, and I'm like, "Look at all of my servants. This is great." And then all of a sudden, I misperform. I scream too loud, and all of a sudden, I get the bad look, and I'm like, "I don't want that. I better not do that." So then I start building walls around me, and I'm like, don't do that, that's not safe. Oh, don't do that, you're going to get spanked. And so you begin to close your world and start to become this person, and then you're like, well, now I go to kindergarten and I'm like, I love everyone. And people are like, this didn't happen to me, but I've heard the story. uh I like this person, this kid is so awesome. You bring him home, and your parents like, why are you talking to them? They're not Christian, or they're not white, or they're not this. And they begin to question. This happens to so many of us growing up. It's like, that doesn't fit in. You're like, yeah, but I love them. They make me laugh. They're great. And so now you begin to be defined and influenced by both the family that you didn't select and the environment. So as you're being forced into all of this in your closing, most of us are not consciously observing it, or we are, and then we forget. That's debatable. But whatever it was, is back then we were pure and we just wanted to love and be expressed and for everyone to get along. But we started picking up all these things and building the walls. And so we do it, to protect ourselves, but to what detriment? How far? Um, And so that's where, it kind of gets sticky and convoluted, or whatever, however you want to think about it. But there has to be this journey in life at some point, or a mentor, someone has to come along and question this. And so at first we're just trying to protect ourselves, but then how do you exit that, and when do you finally start standing up for yourself? And for some people, it's not safe for 19 years. You have to leave the house and go off on your own before you say, you know what, I don't care for the church that I grew up in. I don't care for the family and influence. And it's not saying 100%. But some of the beliefs that your parents have, you may not get along with. Some of the beliefs that the religion that you grew up under, or non-religion, or politics, for instance. So most of us just associate with things, and we're like, oh, my parents are Republican, therefore I'm Republican. My parents are Christian, therefore I am. No, 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 no. So
Right.
I've turned back through all of it, and really figured out who is Chris. When it comes to titles, I don't really take titles. I try not to, or I'll take it for a moment. I'll explore it in discussion, but then I drop it. I'm not Republican. I'm not Democrat. If anything, I might be libertarian. I'm more of a Christian with Buddhist tendencies. Love the story of Christ consciousness, and all the parables and things that go with there. But I love in Buddhism, Hinduism, and all these other stories of people that rose above and loved humanity, overcame. It's America, man. We love the underdog. But yeah, sorry. Did that answer a little bit?
Oh, that answered it beautifully, Chris. We start boxing ourselves in when we're this infinite soul in a flesh suit, in our vessel. But then these boundaries start happening because we live in a physical realm, or at least what we sense to be a physical reality. If you touch the stove, it's going to be hot, you're going to burn yourself, and you're like, ow, I'm not going to touch the stove again. So that's something that's, in our lower chakras, like you were saying, in that lower foundation of the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, is that safety. But at what point in time do other people, whether it's our parents, our teachers, society, politicians, start putting their boundaries on us that we succumb to and sequester, but we don't resonate with that? Yet we just go along with it because this is a fast-paced existence that we're living, and we have to do things to maintain that safety. And that's financial, that's shelter, that's warmth, food. But at a certain point in time, like you said, there needs to be a point, whether you have influence from a mentor, as you were saying, or there was some catalyst moment where you are prompted to start looking at these masks that you're wearing, and start looking at these belief systems that have been installed in you that no longer serve you, and they don't define you. That's not who you are. You're not these labels. You're a labelless person that's going in through life and evolving and becoming a new and fresh, growing version of yourself every single moment, every single second. And so I know you've already touched on this previously, but what was that catalyst moment for you when you realized that, man, I was self-medicating, and then I need to, I need to start evaluating these masks? Was it when your friend challenged you to dry January, or was there other stuff going on as well?
Well, there's many spokes in the wheel of life. So we have the soul is the center, but then you have to take care of the body to survive. There's the emotional spoke where you have to learn how to manage the emotions. There's the mind, and we have to be careful on what we put into it, and we have to properly sort it out. There is your work, what you choose, because in this world we decided that money was important, so we created, all this exchange of money. So you have to have money to survive. So how are you going to manage finances, earn finances, and manage? Then you have your social life, because we're all seeking community. So what is the health in that? What are you doing? And so you start working on your social, but then your financial falls, and then you start working on your body, but then, you get an injury. And so it's like this balancing act or circus act of juggling. And you're like, whoa. Uh, so that's a lot to manage. Now, everything for me pretty much hit rock bottom 2018. My body was falling apart, which includes my nutrition. My emotions were all over the place because I didn't even know what they were. I had three emotions most of my life: happy, horny, and angry. You know, I didn't. I was more reactory. I had quite a lot of explosions throughout my life, just getting frustrated because I was living in the fast paced world, but I was not the controller of my world. So I would literally, it's like running around blind and wondering why you're running into walls and stuff. So I had to pause everything, pump the brakes, completely start from scratch. And I began rebuilding my life. And that didn't get to happen until 2023. Like I said, I went through 24 different therapists and all this other stuff, and we would talk and things, and they would recognize like some thought patterns, and we would discuss the thought patterns, but it didn't nip it in the butt and really reopen me. Um, so 2023 was the year of my restructuring, which, um, health wise, that journey began in 2018 when Scott questioned me, and I began seeing the benefits of keto. Um, and then my emotions and my mindset and all of that was in 2023, where I really began to see like that as a soul, I am in control, and my thoughts are simply just a database for me to reference. And I'm like, oh, that's interesting. Thanks for recalling that one. But when you don't have control of that, you think every thought you have is authentic and true. And that's kind of messed up because I watch Game of Thrones. Sometimes my thoughts are very violent. I spent 5 years in the war zones. So sometimes I can dehumanize someone super quick. So am I that person? Am I a murderer? Am I an asshole? Or are they simply just thoughts that come across my mind because I had seen them, heard them, felt them? Um, and so once I mastered the mind and realized that thoughts are just offerings of potential and not even the truth, I was like, oh, wow, that's interesting. And then you begin to see emotions. And this is where sitting down with the monks, they're like, it's just like a leaf floating along a river. You see it, it comes, it goes, and it passes. And my psychotherapist said the same thing. And I was like, oh, yeah, Chris woke up angry. Chris is still angry. Chris is no longer angry. Chris is happy. Chris is this. And you're just like, huh. And when you don't put any clout into it, and you're just like, that's interesting. Who cares? It goes away. But when we start to resist the negative, and we start to chase after the positive, oh man, life gets frustrating. So that was what 2023 was really deeply understanding what are the emotions that Chris experiences. Not just logically. I could list off probably about 40 different types of emotions. Um, but to say, how is Chris? What are his tendencies? But more importantly, is where is he at in this exact moment? And that's where sitting with the monks is true inventory. Eckhart Tolle also talks present moment, the now. What is the now, and how do you come back? And once I mastered the mind, the emotions, and the money started flowing a lot easier. Relationships got better, work got better, my concentration got better, sleep got better. I became less reliant. I don't take any pills now. For anything for my pain management. Every now and then, maybe a couple times a year, I'll have to for the fractures. But for the most part, um, I'm free.
Dude, that's incredible. Congratulations on that. And just kudos and, being the observer. And, as we're having this conversation, by the way, you're like piecing together my brain differently. Like I can feel like if what they say about your brain, like every time you have a new thought, like it wrinkles or something like that, I can feel my brain getting more wrinkly talking to you. You're like putting these pieces together. When you said that thoughts are offerings of potentiality, that is so well said. That's beautifully said. And you mentioned that, you can with your left brain, you can logically, list off what's happening internally, and that's a step in the right direction of that separation and being the observer. But then you talked more about physical, viscerally experiencing, who you are. And so I wanted to explore that idea of the left brain, right brain, and
Mm.
then how that pertains to the observer, and see if we can talk about your evolution through that heavy left brain environment of the military and your service to our country, and then how that has evolved.
Uh, yeah, left brain, right brain. Left brain's the machine. It's your computer. It's the database. It's your chat GPT, sort of. So everything that we see, smell, taste, hear, feel, everything that you have been a witness to up until wherever you're at right now, I, I say it's all been recorded, whether you know it or not. You might not remember the smell back in the day, but if you were to focus back into the memory and you go take a picture of something, I can get people to smell popcorn without having popcorn in the room. So when you think about that, your brain, every time that I smell popcorn again, is going to say to you, "Oh yeah, you had popcorn with this girl. You had popcorn when you were a kid. You had popcorn here," and it's going to bring up all the memories, the good, the bad, the ugly, and it's just like, "Hey, remember this?" And that's a very helpful tool to have. But what if negativity takes over and you're only able to really pull up the negative aspects? And so when we're in the military, we plan for the worst and we hope for the best. So hoping for the best is, I'm going to go and say to, to this town, like, hey, turn over all your evil people. And then they all turn them over. And you're like, cool, that was peaceful. And then we have discussions with them and they're like, oh, well, stop being evil. And you're like, cool, this is great. But that's not how it is. So there's going to be some fight back and resistance and all of that. And we don't need to get into politics and all of that, which is a whole nother story. But uh, when it comes to that planning for the worst, I have to go into critical mode, and I'm like, well, what could kill me? What are the potential outcomes? So I'm seeing the evil in everyone and throwing all these projections out there. So when I enter into this environment, I don't get killed, and hopefully they don't get killed. But I am catastrophizing everything. I'm like, well, it could rain. We could get electrocuted. We could go through this. We could get into a vehicle accident. And so I'm really kicking up the left brain. And that the left brain's fantastic. Throwing all this information in there, and you're like, And yeah, okay, so here's the possibilities. But then we take it a step further, and this is where, we go into probability. So here's all the possibilities that could ever potentially happen in our imagination. Then we go into probability and we're like, oh, what's the chance of that? Probably 3%. Okay, cool. So we have a 97% chance of success, 3% chance, whatever the calculations that we come into the time of, is that actually going to happen? Like if you're walking out in the desert in the middle of the day, are you going to get zapped by lightning? No, but did we think about it? Yeah, we did. So you start to build these filters of what are all the possibilities, but then you're like, it's not really probable that it's going to happen. So the left brain is fascinating. And that's the masculine energy. And this is where like I tie it all in. Is the left brain masculine energy that we have in us is there to keep us safe. It's why they say like, we are the protectors, we're the providers, we're the ones that hunted and all of that. So that's our innate thing to survive on this earth is the masculine, or you can look at it as the amygdala, all of it. Am I safe? Am I safe? And so as we're experiencing, no matter where we go, whether I'm driving or I'm in a new workplace, the mind is saying, am I safe? Is this familiar? And if it's not familiar, we reach the unknown. And that's fine. We're like, oh, I don't know this. Well, that's cool for someone that's not in PTSD. Because then we go over to the right brain and we're like, oh, what is this unknown? Oh, it could be this, it could be that. Oh, I'm curious about this. Oh, I don't prefer that. This isn't right. And so then we exit the scenario and that's fine, but we don't judge it and we just walk away because we have a healthy left side or right side brain that's like, yeah, it's a possibility. I don't prefer this. Let's not do this again. But what if you have an amygdala hijack, meaning you've experienced a trauma, whether it was chronic. Chronic is I would retain to equal as someone that's been in an accident, sexually assaulted, or something. Whatever it is, it was a very all of a sudden unwanted experience, and it left a print on you. And so, um, how do you navigate that when you're really more now stuck in left brain? Like when I was stuck in PTSD, everything in this world was calculated, and I said, if this, then that. And every time that someone drops a dish, you know, I'm freaking out because I'm wondering why it's so loud, what's happening, who's going to die. Because everything in this database tells me if you hear a loud, sudden crash, things are wrong. You need to get to safety. Or whatever it is in your experience of this person is creepy staring at me, they're going to try assaulting me. It doesn't matter because it's in the left brain. So how do you exit that and say, you know what, that is a potential. Is it true in this moment? And is it going to happen to me again? What is the probability? And so that's fixing the computer database. But there's only so much you can try to fix that by inputting more data and watching more holistic movies and things like that. I needed to fix my right brain. And the right brain is more creativity. It's the feminine energy. So masculine says, okay, Blake is, I am Chris. Blake is not Chris. We're different. Blake has these things. Chris has these things. Cool. That's left brain. I like this about Blake. I don't like this about Blake. And then internally, I like this about Chris. I don't. That's left brain. Right brain says, that's cool, man. There's differences. And that's okay. And I will come to Blake for nutrition and this because he's super smart and we love connecting about that. But maybe you like heavy metal, which I don't understand heavy metal. Uh, but I'm like, that's cool, man. He likes that. I don't. We don't need to experience that together. But I don't judge you on it. I'm just simply like, yeah, not me. Cool. That's where feminine energy is integrating things and pulling them together and seeing the oneness and the interconnectivities and saying, you know what, that's okay, that's cool. It's not it's just a curiosity more than judgment. So I had to learn how to play with that first internally, because I believe if you don't know how to love yourself, how can you love another? I know how to judge myself, therefore I know how to really judge other people, but I choose not to. Um, Maybe that helped.
Oh, that's a huge help. You would think maybe the opposite if somebody is experiencing what you experienced, trauma, in which I think that we all have trauma to different degrees, that you would want to focus on trying to fix the left brain. But as you said, you can try to reprogramming and affirmations and things like that to help quell that left brain dominance. But really, it seems like your strategy that worked for you was to boost the right brain and to bring your hemispheres more so into balance. And I love how you were mentioning the masculine, feminine sort of polarity in gender, um, of those aspects of the brain, and that the feminine energy is more so like, okay, we can all get along. We don't all have to think exactly the same thoughts about everything, but we can still vibe. And the way that you articulated that made me reflect upon my own journey and what's happening to me, especially in my community of raw foods. People disagree about so many different things. And yet I've been able to be friends with all of them and be cool with all of them. Whereas the former me was like you said, I can be really good at judging people. I can be really let my left brain just run everything and take control. But it's been so liberating and so freeing to work on that right brain aspect of myself. And so I love I love how you talked about that and gave like a really good tapestry of you know helping people not only be aware of being the observer and being in the present and knowing that this too shall pass, like that leaf along the river, but then also, if you want to take it a step further, understanding those different qualities of whatever thought stuff is happening, like how they, discuss it in yoga, whether it's a thought or a feeling, or even a sensation, a smell, like the popcorn you mentioned, and those memories that come back, is am I still thinking out of, my left brain or my right brain in an unbalanced way?
Mm.
Um, or am I really that detached observer that is, genderless and completely unbiased? And so that's really cool. And I think that that would be a really cool segue to start talking about your experience when you started really taking the bull by the horns, and you had worked with a psychotherapist, you had worked with a shaman, you had worked with the Tibetan monks. So let's start unpacking that and talk about those different therapies and the effect that they had on your on.
Mm. Um, yeah, so the psychotherapist, Nigel, he's just outside of Orlando, Florida, if anyone's thinking. Um, handed me a book called The Happiness Trap, and The Happiness Trap talks about the proverbial clouds in the sky or the leaves floating on the river, because life just keeps moving. We all feel the movement of life, and we're like, oh, I wish I could hold on to that longer. I wish I could stop here, but when we stop, we realize the river keeps moving. So there's this experience in this mind shift, and where I was in PTSD, because it's multiple aspects. You have the left brain, right brain, but then there's the ego. And in identity, depending on where identity is, and I describe it as this: is, we talked about the spokes of life, but you have your body, your mind, your emotions, your ego, your social life, your financials, and all of it. And you're like, if you take identity in one of these, like I was really identified with my body. I was a top swimmer. I set state record. Like it was awesome experience. But I was like, I am a god, man. Dude, this body is awesome, and I really identified with that. When people would ask me, "Who are you?" I would tell you my resume, and I would say, "Oh, I'm this, I'm that, I'm a military officer, all that," and I didn't really know who I was. Well, turns out if you're identified in any of these, you will struggle in life. You have to realize that you're the soul above it that is managing the body, the mind, the ego, and all of them. They're just simply tools for us to navigate on the journey. And so when I had really identified in there, I thought that I was all of my experiences. That means that Chris was good, bad, and ugly. I was a murderer. Uh, I was a sinner. I was going to hell and all this other stuff. And so I hated that aspect of me. And when we talk about masks, I literally hated maybe 5% of me to start. I was frustrated with me, and then it became hate, and then it became fuck you. Why are you doing this? Sorry for the language.
It's all
but,
good.
but like the hate grew and more of me to where a point there was a tipping point where I hated so much of the choices I was doing because I was in a job and surrounded by people I didn't really want to be in, and now you find yourself wearing multiple masks and you become the mask and you forget about the mask. Um, and you're like, who the hell is this person? Like I couldn't even look in the mirror. I remember that in 2018, and pretty much anywhere leading up to there is a true indicator. If I can't look at myself in the mirror in the morning when I'm brushing my teeth, and I'm like, I couldn't make eye contact because I was like, fuck you. Um, so how do you make sure that your identity and your experience on this earth, and that's where it all began. So through the Happiness Trap book with he's like, as I'm reading the book and we're having these discussions, he's working on me because I was so far, if this is normal, I was like way out here in extreme OCD. Like if you moved my keys, I was going to get mad because you screwed with my environment. Everything needs to be controlled. I can't stand things that are, I could not stand things that were out of order because everything had to be in order for me to feel safe. I had to control my world. So if an anomaly happened, I was upset. But once I realized in reading The Happiness Trap that things just keep going and experiences come and go, and you're not that, you're just the one that is the experiencing the experience. You're the one that's experiencing the thought, experiencing the sensation, experiencing it. Then I realized, oh, okay, there's some things I experienced that I'd never want to experience again, but I am not the experience. And I had real deep forgiveness in 2023 when I realized that. And then um when you realize you're not your thoughts, you're not your emotions, because when a thought comes up, as I referred to it in the past, and like, I'm driving along, some guy cuts me off, and I'm like, I'm now visualizing a monster truck, or maybe I shot him in the head because that was just a visual that popped up. That's a representation, a symbolic representation of anger, because I had seen it in a movie, or maybe I experienced it in person. Um, and to be able to swallow that pill and cut the tie and realize like I am not my thoughts and my emotions was a major shift. And now let's go to um the shaman. As I mentioned, I was really diametrically opposed to taking any sort of drugs. But when I watched the Sean Ryan, I saw all these Navy SEALs. I've seen them on Instagram, and the narcissism I would say is quite their ego. I don't want to put a label on all or anything, but I saw these people that were really suffering. I'll put it at that. And they went off on these journeys and they talk about, and you see a complete change and you see their family members and they all of a sudden become a much better co-partner at work, business partner or spouse or dad. And they were being unleashed from all their demons. I was like, there's profound change. They're not getting addicted, but it broke them free. I said, there's got to be something there. And so I did. And in a psychedelic experience, what ends up happening is When we're in default mode, so left brain is the one that says it's the causal world of if this, then that. It's the calculation. So if I experience this, then this will happen. This is the result. And that's where we get, scared because we're telling ourselves these stories. I hear the dish crash. I think I'm going to die. So I reach for my gun to protect myself. When you're on psychedelics, all those ruts get filled in. Your memory doesn't get erased. That was a concern of mine. I thought that, drugs would erase and kill. We all saw back in the 80s, this is your brain on drugs, and it had an egg that was burning. So,
Right.
so speaking about deep imprints, you're like, hell no, I don't want my brain to die. I need my brain. Yeah, psychedelics doesn't do that. Now, long-term drug abuse, yeah. But how it was. And so I started researching it. And then I learned that pretty much indigenous cultures all around the world have this. And it's for the more extreme circumstances. This guy goes to war. This woman was raped. And so they bring them back into the sweat lodge. And they all have different substances from peyote to psilocybin, ketamine, ibogaine, ayahuasca, all of these all around the world. And they've used it in a holistic, intentional way to bring you back into resonance, to let go of whatever the experience was of which you were traumatized. And so it would bring you back into that pure resonance, that innocent self, your pure soul, and allow you to let go of whatever it was. It might have been extremely injustice, but in that moment, think of it as like a soothing ointment around the brain, and you're just able to observe all your experiences. And you're like, wow, that was horrible, but that's not who I am. Yeah, I am not a victim. I just experienced this in my life. And you begin just to see this pureness, and you let go and you forgive yourself, you forgive others. Not to say, because the assholes that did whatever they did to you, that's on them. That's not on you. And that's not what forgiveness is. You're not saying, oh, I love you, let's fix our relationship. It's just, I'm not going to allow you to dictate my life, to be a weight on me, to be that proverbial bag of the chain on the foot, or whatever visual it is that you want. We're just letting it go because it does not serve my purpose to give you any credibility on my journey. Because I am sovereign. And so you drop all the weights. And that's where, I call it beyond the veil, is you start to begin to, you don't start to begin, you see this pureness. And once you see that, you have to ask, like, well, how do I live in that and walk in beauty every day? Um, so then that's when I met the Tibetans, and I said, well, clearly you guys are doing something right. Um, because almost every day, you almost rarely ever see a monk lose their crap. And I'm like, some people are straight up rude. So how do they do it when they're living some of life's worst circumstances? There's some nights where they're starving. They don't eat for 3 or 4 days, and they're waiting for universe to come deliver them food. They don't plan their days out like I was trained to do, where you're like, okay, I have 3 months supply of food. I've got enough money coming in so I can afford this, and the next day I'm going to be over here. I'm going to be over here. Like, my calendar is projected over 90 days out. Um, so it's all calculated. But for them, I'm like, where are you staying tonight? And they're like, well, I got 3 nights here. And then how do you live with that pressure of not knowing food and all of that? Um, and so I found that they have a daily practice of meditation. And it is through meditation where we begin to become a stronger observer, where we simply notice the things that are happening in our body. We notice the thoughts more. We notice the emotions as they rise. And then they taught me breath work, is you can be super happy, and I can teach you a way to breathe and teach you how to get angry. I can also teach you how to get from angry to happy. Um, and then I realized, from there, I was like, well, if they do this, who else plays with breath work? And who else does meditation? Well, it turns out that the Olympians do it. They're taught breath work and how to relax and all the anxiety that comes before you're about to perform. But also turns out that if you can get into a higher consciousness state or flow state or whatever you want to call it, uh, And you're not performing, you're just doing. And those, when you see beast mode comes out, you're like, how did they perform that weight? How did they do that? Because they weren't thinking about it. They were just in their essence. They let go. Um, so I wanted to know, how do I access that? And that's where sitting down with the Tibetans and getting into their mindset, what is it that you do? How do you eat? Like, what is it that's on there? Like, what is your sleep patterns? Like, what is the first thing you do in the morning? And that's when I learned what the Dalai Lama was. When he wakes up, he takes a deep breath in and he says, thank you for this breath. Others did not have this. I have another day to live. Thank you for this blessing. And to think about that, tens of thousands of people around the world did not wake up that night and they died. But yet you have another day to experience this life and go and do whatever it is. And I thought that was beautiful. So I started living like that. I started putting sticky notes all around. I got reminders on the phone. I was like, I want this so bad, is to be able to be free of all this PTSD and the pills and all of that. So I was on a vendetta to make sure to never go back to 2018. And then I started trying to figure out, how do I help others? Well, I can't tell, you know, I went on a specific path, even though it looks like a psychotic, crazy bundle of knots. So I started talking to other people and I was like, all right, what was your craziest moment in life? Well, what did you do to get out of it? Or where are you at in it? And so I started learning other people's perspectives and I started studying all the different psychology. I read all the different, uh, um, I read the Bible, the Quran, the I Ching, just tons of different books because I wanted to be able to sit down with anyone from any religion and any walk of life. So I understand the poor, I understand the rich, I understand so many of these, and I'm not saying I'm a subject matter expert, but I just wanted to taste in the flavor to see, like, what are the struggles and where you're at um, along the way. And when you finally get into understanding what attachment is, it takes away the suffering. Drop the attachment that we have and just be the observer, and life is much less of a struggle than it is. Not to say, like, you still experience the ups and downs, the emotionals and the WTFs where you're like, did, did I, wow, that just happened. But you pull back out and you're like, you know what? Yeah, I was throwing judgment out there. Let's pull off of that. And it makes life just so much more beautiful. But yeah, that was 2023.
That's hugely pivotal. I love your tenacity of having that vendetta against your issue and going for the gusto. You know, you got that information from the podcast. You were researching on Instagram. You saw that pattern. You recognize that, you know, this treatment with the shamanic journey is helpful and that there are no, you know, bad side effects and things like that. And so you just went forward and did it. And then same with the monks. And I love that you still retain that really strong left brain and that military type of pedigree where you're like, I want to know how you sleep. I want to know how you get your food. I want to know how you structure your day. I want to know, like, what you think when this happens. How do you stay so centered? But it's in a balanced way now. So it's almost like that super strong left brain is now you've got a super strong both sides. And that's really cool. And I think that's showing human potential. And I think that you're right on the edge of that. And it's really remarkable to see your journey. So, like, it's inspiring me, you know, in real time here. And when you're talking about letting go of attachment, I want to tell you my quick analogy on that. And then I want to see if you can riff back on that to me and go a little deeper on that subject.
Yeah.
And my take on that is that if you're in a state of chronic suffering, when you let go of that, you're going to experience temporary pain. But through that temporary pain, the pendulum swings back to that middle, and then now you're peace. But most people, they willingly stay in the chronic suffering state because they're afraid of that temporary pain.
Mhm.
So do you find that to be an accurate analogy of suffering? And yay or nay, and what would you respond? How would you respond to that?
Um, there's discomfort in the unknown. Um, Many of us experience unknown at different times in our life, and it bites us. Like we didn't know the stove was hot, and so we burned our hand. That was discomfort. And so then we write all that down, and the left brain's like, yeah, we don't know what this is, don't do it. And so you begin to close off your world more and more and more and more, the more that you get burned by our experiences. And we just simply have to notate that that's what it was, and that's it, because otherwise our world starts getting closed off, and we begin to, you can see this in romance is, the first breakup or the first backstabbing or betrayal, we become less inclined and we become more negative about it because the database is getting added with all these bigger imprints of pain and all of it. Uh, so much so like that change becomes, we become hesitant to change at first, um, knowing that there's going to be the discomfort. So why do people stay in relationships when they're getting emotionally abused or neglected? You know, not Deepak Chopra, but can't remember who it is. Anyway, you have these Gabor Mate. Um, when
Uh,
is the pain? The pain has to be more than the comfort in order for people to change. And as a death doula, that's where a lot of people don't end up really seeing and waking up to life until they hit the proverbial death wall. They hit that near-death experience. They get the cancer, and then all of a sudden, their life is spinning. They're questioning everything. And for those that make it through that, you really begin to see what your priorities are, where you're wasting your time and your life, your energy, and you'll see sudden shifts, like major shifts on people that experience near death because they've literally had to survive. And so the pain was so much that they end up giving up. It doesn't have to be that way. And that's where I tell people, I'm like, don't wait for death to wake you up, because we know along the way, and we're asking questions of like, why am I here, or should I be doing this, and all of this. And there are the changes you should make, but you're just not. So when is the pain too much? When do you recognize it? And this is where people need to sit down and have time to reflect and look at their life in a healthy way, where you're like, oh yeah, what are my finances? What are my goals? Are these friends that I acquired still serving my purpose or not? Um, so that's where I began to explore. But yeah, I'm actually just having a major. I read Napoleon Hill, Laws of Success, which that was his major thing, and this is going to help people with more left brain, where you're trying to figure out how to structure your life. Like I got to sit with the monks and listen to all of that, but if you really want to learn how to rise and have a foundation and build up from there, up from the Maslow's hierarchy standpoint, reading Napoleon Hill's Laws of Success, or you could read the shorter version, How to Think and Grow Rich. Um, it was rewritten because not a lot of people wanted to read the really boring longer version. And then Think and Grow Rich, everyone wants to make more money, especially in this current world. So measuring success off of money, how do you become successful? Because the laws of success, there's 16 laws. He traveled around the globe, meeting czars and presidents and world leaders and Fortune 100 people that rose up and came from nothing to everything. And he was like, well, what is that? He found 16 things in common. And one of those is having the mind, having a goal, setting yourself up with people that are of like mind around you. So sometimes you need to push people off into the distance, maybe not talk to them as much, bring new people in to help, inspire and influence. You need to have a mentor, someone that's like down the journey of where you're visualizing. You're like, yes, I want to be there. And if you want to be amazing speaker, then maybe Tony Robbins is the person you're looking up to. And you're like, okay, what does Tony do? So monkey see, monkey do. So that's how the left brain works. And then there's all these other laws and structures that are there. And so by following that, plus the monks, is you begin to see and take, and you kind of play around with it. I changed a lot of the little things along the way, and I was like, okay, this is how Chris is needed for this time. But here's the other part. Just because something works for a period of time doesn't mean it's going to work forever. And I actually encourage people to change, even in your nutrition. If you're going to do keto here, maybe switch to Whole30, maybe go to something, or, kind of play around with it. But always be the observer. But many of us will hit the proverbial wall and we'll make a big change. Only for 3 years later, we're stuck back in the mundane cycle of comfort and didn't realize we're stuck again. So then we change again. So I say, have a healthy, if it's on your monthly, quarterly, whatever it is, or have a partner. Like, I have the most beautiful bride the world could offer. And so we self-reflect almost every night. We're like, oh yeah, what was up with that? And oh, what do you think about this? And so we're like, yeah, have you been getting more tired recently? Yeah, I've been yawning around 10 or 2 or whatever. And I'm like, oh, well, let's see what we can play around with that. So it begins more of a playground. Uh, and then the other thing I definitely want to mention is for those that are looking of how to break attachment, the Toltecs, Dr. Miguel Ruiz, him and his dad are fantastic. They stem out of Mexico, Toltec tradition. But they have the 5 levels of attachment and then the 4 agreements. Those are 2 fantastic short read books that changed my life, my perspective on how to pull off of addictions, attachments, however you want to look at it.
Those are beautiful recommendations. And man, I love how you give such a comprehensive, I guess, explanation of applying these practices and these sort of esoteric concepts or these heady, wisdom concepts, but like in a practical world explanation, whether it's with your life or with just a season in your life ending that, you know, it started but now you're comfortable again and you've got to grow again. And that's the nature, that's the nature of life. And yeah, those book recommendations, Napoleon Hill and Miguel Ruiz, those were huge for me too. But you inspired me to read the 5 levels of attachment because I haven't read that one. So I'm gonna definitely see if I can find that one on Amazon after the show. And we are coming up on an hour, and we barely scratched the surface. We still need to talk about the death doula. We still need to talk about Trinity. We still need to talk about 9D. So if you're feeling cool about it, I would love to run this back for a sequel, and we can definitely do a round 2 sometime very soon and touch in on some of those other aspects. I think we laid a really good foundation today of your origin story and then what brought you up until now, and we got to really witness like how you think and your philosophy on things. So I hope everyone really lets that sit in. And one of the messages that I want to highlight that you've touched on a couple times today is just allow yourself time and grace to just sit with yourself. If you're feeling like something's stagnating or you need to reinvent yourself, take some time and just allow yourself that time. And that was the message that I was getting from you, and that was really hitting hard for me too, because we can just get caught up in the busyness of life. um, and so I think this was a fantastic start to an ongoing series with you, Chris. I'd love to have you back for that round two, and start talking about, like, okay, so now that we're at the present, what is Chris up to now? What is he doing? And, what are your gifts? Because you've got your hands in some really cool stuff. And yeah, if that sounds good, let's shoot for that.
Yeah. No, thank you for having me on. I really enjoyed meeting you at the festival, and I've enjoyed this experience. And I appreciate what you're doing with the world, getting people to just think, and using your testimony. I do want to leave everyone with that: is everyone has a journey. I am no one special. Everyone, just you've hit your proverbial wall. Have the courage to talk about it, because that is what helps other people be able to unlock the next door they need to open. Um, so I encourage everyone to be able to talk about whatever it was, their journey, the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Absolutely. And Chris, thank you so much for being here. It has been an absolute pleasure. We're shooting this in the morning, so th- today is already an epic day, and the day has just begun. And so, with that renewed, like, sense of just appreciation, um, I hope you have an amazing rest of your day as well, Chris. And thank you guys all for watching. And until next time, we will talk soon. Peace.